After World War II, the American home just completely transformed. Seriously, it was this amazing time of shiny new gadgets and incredible conveniences, a time when technology promised to reshape our daily lives. But what if the biggest, most revolutionary piece of tech from that era wasn't a fancy new appliance, but something hidden away, right behind the walls? Let's dig in. Okay, I know, that sounds like a pretty wild claim, right? But it really gets to the heart of what we're exploring today. We're so used to thinking of the internet as the ultimate game changer, but the sources we're looking at suggest that the real engine of social change in the 20th century, well, it might have been something a lot less digital. So, picture it. Post-war America. There's this massive boom in prosperity. And the American dream? It wasn't just a house with a white picket fence anymore. No, the dream was a house absolutely packed with the latest and greatest gadgets. This was the dawn of the modern, convenient home. And the scale of this change was just staggering. By 1950, a whopping 94% of American homes were plugged in. And this wasn't just about flicking on a light switch. This was about powering a full-blown revolution right from inside the home. This massive electrification really set the stage for everything that came next. And just like that, store shelves and appliance showrooms were overflowing with these new household miracles. Every single one came with a promise to save you time, to eliminate that back-breaking labor. I mean, from instant cake mixes to vacuum cleaners, these weren't just products. They were being sold as a ticket to a whole new, easier way of life. Which brings us to the big popular story. You know the one. The story goes that all these time-saving devices were the key that unlocked the door for women, finally freeing them from household chores and letting them enter the paid workforce in huge numbers. But is that what really happened? Right. This is the theory you hear all the time. There have even been economic models built around this idea that as appliances got cheaper, the home became way more productive, which made it possible for married women to go out and get a job. It's a clean, simple story. And honestly, it's pretty compelling. And hey, when you look at a chart like this, the story seems to check out, right? The timeline for the appliance boom lines up almost perfectly with this incredible surge in married women joining the labor force. The correlation is impossible to miss. But as we all know, correlation is not causation. So that's the big question we have to ask. Did refrigerators and washing machines actually cause this massive social shift? Or is the truth, a little more complicated? Turns out, when you really dig into the data, a much more interesting story starts to unfold. Okay, this is where the real detective work begins. Researchers at the National Bureau of Economic Research dove into census data from 1940 to 1950. But they weren't looking at the flashiest new gadgets. No, they were looking at something way more fundamental. And what they found, well, it completely flips the old story on its head. And what they found was just wow. The contrast is so stark. The rapid adoption of modern refrigerators, which jumped from 44 to 80% of homes in just that one decade, it had almost no statistically significant effect on women joining the workforce. But indoor plumbing, that showed a significant positive connection. So why? Why was plumbing so much more important than a refrigerator? This quote from the research paper really nails it. The most liberating technologies aren't always the most high-tech. They're the ones that replace the hardest, most grueling work that you just can't get around. I mean, think about it. Before a modern fridge, you had an ice box. You had milk delivered every day. You could pop down to the local store. Sure, they weren't perfect, but they were substitutes. But for indoor plumbing, what was the substitute? Hauling heavy buckets of water into the house over and over, day after day? Getting rid of that chore, now that was a true game changer. But hold on, because this story has another, absolutely critical layer. It wasn't just about which technology was the most liberating, it was about who actually got access to it. Because the spread of these modern conveniences was anything but equal, and the reasons why reveal a much darker side of the American dream. And the key policy behind this was something called redlining. Now, this wasn't just a few bad actors being prejudiced. This was an institutional practice. The federal government itself drew lines on maps and basically blocked off entire neighborhoods, mostly minority neighborhoods, from getting things like mortgages. And they weren't exactly subtle about it. This quote, it's from the Federal Housing Administration's own official manual. The policy was crystal clear: enforce racial segregation. And that directly decided which neighborhoods got investment for development and basic infrastructure, and which did not. And you can see the devastating real-world results of that policy right here in the data. By 1950, this massive gap had opened up. While most of the country was getting modern plumbing, huge parts of the South, where redlining and Jim Crow laws were deeply entrenched, were just left far, far behind. So the takeaway here is unavoidable. Access to this single most liberating piece of household technology, plumbing, was systematically denied to many communities, especially communities of color. The modern American home wasn't an equal opportunity dream. For millions of people, it wasn't a dream they were allowed to have. And this denial of access had consequences that rippled out far beyond the four walls of the home. See, this isn't just a story about technology anymore. It's about how discriminatory policy created this chain of inequality that we are still dealing with to this day. You can literally see the cascade effect laid out here. It starts with discriminatory housing policy. That leads directly to unequal access to basic stuff like plumbing. That creates an unequal starting line for women who want to join the workforce, and that, in turn, leads to unequal opportunities to earn an income and build wealth for your family over generations. And the fallout from these policies didn't just stop in the 1950s, not even close. The sources are very clear that the consequences are still with us, contributing to everything from the racial wealth gap and residential segregation to gaps in the quality of education and even public health. Think about it. For most Americans, owning a home is the #1 way they build wealth. So by systematically denying that opportunity to minority communities for decade after decade, these policies created a huge structural barrier to building wealth that helps explain the staggering disparities we still see today. So that simple idea of a technological revolution that freed everybody equally, yeah, it's a myth. The engine of liberation was powerful for sure, but it ran on tracks that were deliberately laid down to benefit some communities while completely bypassing others. Which really leaves us with this final thought. This whole story of plumbing and redlining and refrigerators, it isn't just history. It's a powerful reminder that technology is never neutral. Its impact is always shaped by the world it enters. And it forces us to ask ourselves, what invisible blueprints from the past are still shaping our homes and our opportunities right now?